Hello everyone. I am just taking a look here and I am going to add our lovely guest. Hope I don't have to look through 4,000 people. I don't know why. Let me see here. Perfect. All right.
Okay, cool.
All right. Is it working?
Yeah, and I think I'm just
Okay,
trying to get
perfect.
my camera.
Perfect. All right, awesome.
Okay, cool.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
So thank you so much for being my first guest. I'm super excited.
Oh, of
You
course.
know,
Actually, this is my first time doing a live, so
perfect. So we'll definitely navigate this together. So basically, like I'm just gonna go through and ask you some questions, and we'll see kind of how it goes from there. How's that sound?
sounds great to me.
All right, perfect. So for those who don't know you, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started as an author.
Sure. Hi everybody. My name is Kathryn Troy. As a daytime person, I am a history professor. I live on Long Island. I'm married. I have two kids. I have six rats, um, which is a lot. This is actually the first time I've had that many rats, so they take up all of my brain power these days. Um, and A Vision in Crimson is I think, my first book, but now it's also my fourth book because I'm re-releasing it, and it's been revamped with City Owl Press. So there are a lot of major rewrites that have been done since the first time I released this, self-published in 2017. Um, and it was, in terms of coming to writing, it was something that I did really slowly. Um, when I would say I was older, was already in my late 20s, I think. I can't even, my brain does not do math. I don't know how old I was in 2017, probably in my 30s. Um, and I was starting a new career where I had to commute for a really long time, and I had just had my first child, and I was like, yes, I'm gonna have so much time to read on the train. It's gonna be awesome. And that is totally not what happened. I had these sort of stories running in my head of things that I wish I was reading, different ways that I wish that other stories I'd been reading had gone. And I didn't really read a whole lot of romance. I was reading mostly fantasy, and I was like, well, that would have been so much better with a love story in it. And so my brain just kind of took over, and I became kind of possessed by my stories, where I had to get them down. And so I was writing like a madwoman for a really long time.
Hmm. And so you mentioned that you're a history professor, and there's some historical elements in this book. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Actually, the first book I ever wrote was a nonfiction book because I was writing academically, and so when I started to do fiction as a hobby, I was like, oh, it doesn't have to. I don't have to prove anything. Like, if I want something to work and make sense in a fantasy world, like, I can figure out how that works. I don't have to find it somewhere else. Um, and so for this particular series, it was more based on literature than anything in history specifically, but with the vampiric elements. It's very obvious, I think, that I draw very heavily on Dracula. I mean, he's a character, um, but in addition to that, I kind of went back to some of the things that Bram Stoker himself had based his character on. So there's a lot of stuff in folklore there, and in one of the other short works that I have that's horror based and vampire based, it's the same thing, that it's all things that are European or Slavic folklore, and sometimes things that are in those kinds of texts that we don't really see in in fiction. So I wanted to bring some of that stuff out. Like, oh gosh, in this book, one of the things that you see a little bit is the home soil, that Dracula keeps Transylvanian soil in his pocket. So it was one of those things where I was like, that is really cool, and logistically it's kind of difficult in a fantasy world. So how can I make that be something tangible for him?
Awesome. Awesome. We do have some people joining. So, hello, everybody. We are here in conversation with Kathryn Troy, the author of A Vision in Crimson, which comes out next Tuesday, right?
I can't. I've been in launch mode for so long. I can't believe it's almost here.
I know, I know. Um, and so tell us a little bit about like your writing process. Like, do you outline or how do you kind of like get your ideas? I know you have quite a few ideas, so how do you even sort through those?
Oh my goodness, I am such a planner. It's not just the books, it's like all my whole life. I am a super organized person, so everything is written down by hand in notebooks, and they have to be specific notebooks. I buy the three subject notebooks of a particular size that will fit in my purse so I could take it wherever I'm going. Um, and I usually will outline the plot arc, and then I'll say, okay, like this is how these are going to be the plot beats. This is how we're going to get from A to B, and how things are going to be connected up. Um, and for people who are reading this series, when you get to book two, it's much more streamlined, but it's also split. So you'll see different perspectives in a much clearer light. I don't want to say more than that. Um, but there's more consecutive, like, okay, now you're following this person and you're in their head, and then you're following that person and you're in their head. Where if I was writing it, I would have written the whole thing out completely in terms of when things are happening chronologically. And then I go back and say, okay, how many chapters are going to be chunked together at any given time? And when do we flip over to a new perspective? So there's lots and lots and lots of planning. And I'll have like slips of paper. It looks like Indiana Jones's Grail, like how many papers I slip into a notebook. Because then there'll be a day where I don't have it with me, and I will grab literally whatever paper I have. I've got I've got things that were graded tests that have notes written on the back of them because it would have been all I had, or like a roster that I was taking attendance on, and I'm writing in like this tiny font because I'm like, I only have this one page, I have to get it all down. And so I'll have like a table of contents, that stuff I know I want to do, and then I will work off of that and flesh it out and build those details. And then of course I'll get crazy and come back to it. So I wish I had it in this room. I couldn't go grab one, but um, I make notes to myself, which then makes my life really hard because then I'm drawing all over a typed piece of paper after I've typed it up. Then I'm rewriting everything in the lines and making marks to back pages. So it'll be like, I always have to print it out single spaced. I have very crazy, I have to print it out double space on one side so that when I go to rewrite the entire page, I have a space to do it. So then I have all that paper in front of me. And it looks psychotic. It looks like I need to be put away for what I've done.
um and so you plan and you outline, and kind of go through those. And I know you mentioned multiple point of views. So multiple point of views as a reader, I have like a love-hate relationship with multiple point of views.
Mhm.
And so how do you kind of get yourself like in a space, like how do you decide like what chapter should be in whose point of view, and kind of and that sort of thing.
Sometimes I mess up. Uh, I usually I think of like when I'm first imagining a story, it's usually just something that's playing out in my head like a film. And so then I have to figure out the words that go with that to set a scene, to establish, a setting, and also to figure out what a character is saying and doing and thinking. And then there will be times when I'm like, that person wasn't in that room, so that their perception is different from the way that I've written it here. So it can't be from that person, it has to be this other person. But if it's this person doing it, then they would respond in a different way. So sometimes I do have to sort of actively think to myself, who has seen what or who knows what, and then how they would respond kind of comes from there.
Awesome. Awesome. So Tell us a little bit about what you enjoy most about kind of writing in this genre, because I know that you said that you wrote written nonfiction, and you mainly read fantasy and not romance. So tell us how you kind of settled here and what you enjoy about writing in it.
Um, Gosh, I don't. I mean, I find that I really enjoy writing love stories. Um, I've been very happily married for a very long time. I met my husband when we were freshmen in college, when I was 17 and just kind of turning 18. And we're going to be 40 at our next birthdays. So our birthdays are about 8 days apart. So I say our birthday because it's right there. Um, and I just, that feeling of, like you found a person and that person is great for you, and I mean, obviously, like I said, I was dating him for 4 years, been married for whatever it is now, 16, 17 years. I have two kids, so my relationship with my husband has been through all of those phases, and so I like to experiment with that. That there's new, there's established, there's vulnerable. Um, there's like those highs and lows of when your connection is strong versus not strong, and so I like to kind of look at those things. That's about as close as it gets to write what you know for me, obviously, because I do not live in a fantasy world as much as I wish I could say that I did. Um, and I like doing that. I like world building a lot.
And so anything that you took from your relationship with your husband that you kind of put into, the love story that you
I couldn't say. He'll be embarrassed.
take what you will from that, right? So world building. You mentioned world building. How do you how do you go about that in a fantasy world? Because, I mean, we do have elements of, being in, Transylvania, obviously, and things like that, but then we
Yeah.
also fantasy elements. So how do you kind of go about that and fleshing out the whole world?
I I try to think of things that will make sense for different people. So, um, the Transylvania and the vampiric element, I knew I wanted to work with that. Vampires, from a historical folkloric sense, are things that I study a lot of and have done a lot of research and a lot of writing on from an academic standpoint. So that was always, and I've got an insane amount of gothic fiction in my house. Um, and so that was always going to be a starting point for me. I was really interested with this book by the prospect of combining that sort of Gothic tradition with the things that I love most about fantasy. And the things that I love most about fantasy are really high classic fantasies like C.S. Lewis, like The Lord of the Rings, like the Prydain Chronicles, like that. To me, that is fantasy. And, every stripe of fantasy is wonderful, but those are always the things that have drawn me. And Greek myths have always been the thing that drew me. And I started thinking about, how, like, let's say in a world like C.S. Lewis's, that you do have a lot of hybrid animals. It's like, what does that look like then if you take this kind of paranormal dystopian idea of human vampire hybrid, where that's not okay, into a world where that is completely the norm? How would that change a person's life? And so that's Luca.
So how do you is it Dampier? Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Okay, because I know from I read what was it, Vampire Academy, so I kind of know like that, and I was like, okay, I think I know how to say that. So
Yeah.
Dampier. So honestly, I love Luca as a character. I think he's just
I
wonderful.
was actually, I was just, he's right. He's right up there. That's so,
Oh, that's so cool.
um, so this is an animation cell from the original Vampire Hunter D 1985, and then this one, which is my favorite. I really shouldn't keep that in the bedroom. It's so dangerous. Let me see if I can grab it. So that's from Bloodlust in 2000. Um, and if I had to say, who's Lucas casting, it's like, well, he's a cartoon, so.
Um, what do you need in your writing space to help you like stay focused like on what you're doing?
Hmm. Quiet. So one thing I don't really have a lot of is
Yeah,
peace and
that
quiet.
was my question. Having two
When
kids.
my children were younger, I would usually leave the house. I would go to a university cafe that was nearby, or I'd go to a library, or I'd go to Panera while my kids were like in preschool. And now it's usually if I have days off from work and they're at school and I'm at home, or I'm working from home, which is very often because I teach a lot of online classes. Then that's what I need. I get overstimulated very, very quickly.
Um, and what is your kryptonite as a writer? What would you say that would be?
I don't know. What do you mean? Like, what is my like the thing that I fall for? The thing that makes me trip up? What do you mean
Yeah,
by kryptonite? Yeah,
yeah,
I don't
yeah. So
know.
I mean, right, like kryptonite for Superman is like his,
I don't know.
like is writer's block something that would be
It's
kryptonite
not
for you?
really. No, and that's the thing. Like, because I will figure it all out before I really start to dig. I don't really have that as much. I think sometimes it will be that as much as I want to do certain things, it's always a balancing act in terms of time. So like I'll say to myself, okay, I'll spend most of my summer writing, or I'll spend my winter recess writing. It doesn't happen. I'll just veg out. And I actually am more active as a writer when I'm more active as a professor, which seems completely wrong, but that's not like I don't know, I'm either on or I'm off.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So now we're just going to talk about Vision and Crimson itself. So you did say that, you had written it before and now it's being published under another publisher. So how does that process go?
So, originally when I had self-published this, it was the first time I had done anything with fiction, so I'm not saying it was bad, but it's not as good as this version that people are reading now. There were things about my writing style and my craft that were not as refined. Um, and I had a couple too many ideas that made it more difficult for people to follow because my head is really scary inside there. And I learned sort of how to be sharper with my language over time. So, for people who have read more than one of my books, you'll notice that the stuff that had just come out recently, like The Shadow of Theron, like that is the cleanest manuscript that I have because it's the most recent one. So I was able to go back and take the story that I love and these characters that I am obsessed with personally. Like they're the first people who haunted me, and I was like, I need to get these guys not out of my head, but like I need to get this stuff down because it's dogging me. And the minute I got that book down, I was like, well, shit, there's more. So this is now what was going to be just one big book. I was like, this is too big. Now I need to make it two books, which is how we ended where we ended without saying too much. Um, and then, the time I got to writing the end of book two, I was like, oh, jeez, there's more. Like there's just more, like I need more space. I need more breathing room for this story. And so, I just finished writing book three a while ago, and I actually still have to type it up, but it's all there, and I'm very satisfied with it. So now with City Owl, I'm super happy that we've got this wonderful new cover, which I've got right here because they just came in the mail this week.
I love it. So pretty.
So we've got the new cover, we've got a new branding, new blurb, and I just know more about not just books. I mean, I've always been a reader, but I know more about how to talk about my book in a way that I couldn't really before. Like then I would start saying it, and I would start talking about all these things that are there, but not necessarily the main plot, and so it would sound really wackadoodle because some of the things are wackadoodle. I get that, and so if you just kind of take it all in one shot, then it's very overwhelming.
And so I'm really happy to hear you say that you've written more books in this world because I mean obviously the cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's awesome. So as you were saying, you have kind of like learned, like there's a new blurb and how to kind of talk about your book. So if you had to describe Vision and Crimson in like one sentence, what would that sentence be?
Dracula invades Narnia, but smutty.
I love that. I think that's awesome. literally writing that because
It's right on.
so Dracula it's Narnia but smutty. That's really funny. Perfect. And so we talked a little bit about Luca. Um, was he your favorite character to write? And or was Caitlin? And how
No, it was neither of them. It was the one
was
that I
it?
didn't plan for that took me by surprise. It was Alaric. I
And
don't,
why?
I don't, I don't know what that guy did to me.
Character
Um,
killer.
no, he was gonna die. That chapter where he um dies. At first, that was it, and then he was gone, and I was like, oh, but I I feel like there's more story to him, and there's more character. Like he kind of got developed in a way that was not a part of the original plotting or planning. And then once I had him on the page, I was like, but his interactions with her and their chemistry is really powerful. And I don't want to let that go so quickly. Like to just get rid of him seems so hasty.
Hmm.
So I pulled it back in, and I have especially in this particular book, I have reworked his scenes so many times because I wanted to get it right, especially the scenes where it's the three of them in the same room. I was in my head, I was like, you could cut that tension with 10 knives. Um, and so I don't know, there was just something that was really fun and very, like he was the most organic character. Like I didn't really have to think about him too much. Like he was just there. And there's something that is so different from the other characters that I create. Like I crafted Luca on purpose the way that he is, that, he's meant to be this swoon-worthy white knight sort of hero. And Alaric is very opposite of that. And there was something about that I was like, oh, but I love you though. That really drew me in. So I was like, I need more. Yeah, I know, Sam. Don't worry. He has his own arc. He has his own character arc. It's coming.
Awesome. Um, what was the most challenging part of writing this book? That I mean, I know that you had written it before, but just generally about it.
It was really intimidating for me to write Dracula, actually, because I just have such tremendous respect for the source material. And I didn't, I mean, and it's not, I'm not the first person to do this, right? And I'm not the first person to make it romantic either. Like, I have read Ginny and Frost's, and I love that series. So it was really hard for me to say that this is going to come off right, in terms of like the tone that I wanted him to have, especially because he's a character that lasts throughout the series. So I felt like I had really big shoes to fill, and I wasn't necessarily trying to one up Bram Stoker because I don't think that that's doable, but I wanted to make it feel authentic.
Hmm.
And so that was tough. I really had to channel Christopher Lee a lot to get to that point where he's like snide but suave at the same time.
Hmm. And I think, in those situations, I'm like, I mean, obviously, like, I was surprised, like, at that, like, word, when it came
It's
in,
like,
but I was like, oh, okay. And then, I think you did write him very well. I think that he did come off the way that you intended. So, I don't know, I really liked him as a character. So I'm
thank you.
excited there's going to be a lot more
I
for
mean,
him.
and for, there were parts that were easier that because my reading habits are very different from my writing habits. Like I said, I am literally up to my eyeballs every day in Gothic fiction. And so the vocabulary that goes along with him is also very different from the stuff that you see in other parts of the book. So setting the mood came a little bit more naturally to me because that lexicon, like that those kinds of words are there for me, like at the tip of my brain. So I was able to kind of call on that stuff and say, okay, like this is what it's like when he's on page.
Good. Well, I think that that's a really good, strength. And I think a lot of the time, writers, they do it for their full-time job, but a lot of the time, in the beginning, it is that kind of dual. So I think that, that lends something to your craft and the way you write that, hopefully, it comes, more naturally, if that's the word. What's one of your favorite quotes or lines from the book?
When Alaric says, "What's one murder between bedfellows?" That is just like I mean, it's him in a nutshell. It's he's a really really dangerous person, but he also is now that I don't, this wasn't intentional, but now that I think about it, for people for whom this reference makes sense, the character of Fiyero, the scarecrow in the Wicked musical, that he's like, you know, everything just rolls off his shoulders, like completely carefree, like nothing matters, like nothing is important. And so then when it is important, then it like becomes this kind of big dramatic moment. But yeah, just like this kind of carefree charm, despite the fact that as far as the non-powered humans go, he's probably the most powerful one.
And then I know you said that Luca is just kind of like a cartoon character, but if you were to fan cast like any other characters in your book, is there anybody in particular that you had in mind? Like, was it really inspired by somebody that you had in
Oh, I
mind?
mean, it would have to be somebody with a really pretty face. Like, cause I know a lot of guys can take, we've seen it with Cavill, like a lot of people can take heavy makeup and costumery really well. So that stuff you could get, but you need to have like that perfect face, the perfect eyes, perfect nose. Gosh, I don't know. Probably a British person would be my guess.
I don't know why, like Ben Barnes, like when you described a perfect person, that just came to my head because I think he's so
I'm trying to remember. There are a couple of guys, but I can't. Oh gosh, I haven't seen them in too many things. I don't remember their names.
Kim says
Look,
Henry
Henry Cavill is too big.
Cavill. Yes.
He's not. You need somebody who's really slight, who has a more youthful face. Like, I'm not going to say young, like he should not look like a YA character, but definitely on the thin side. Yeah, no, Sam, nobody's disputing that Henry is gorgeous, but that's not the right call. Somebody who's got Tom Hiddleston's build, that would do.
Hmm.
It's
Awesome.
got to be somebody very, very tall and thin who would look really good in, look good in all shadow. That's what you need.
I'm gonna have to look at Pinterest and see if I can like make a Pinterest board about who I would think. So if anybody who's watching has questions, please go ahead and ask them in the comments. We're kind of on our last part of the interview, and if you have any questions for Kathryn, please put them in there.
Ask
Um,
them.
So we kind of talked about what you kind of like to do when you're not writing. You're a history professor and you're busy with your kids and your husband, but are there any other hobbies or things that you like or anything that you'd want to try?
Oh, so many. So, my husband and I are both heavy gamers, both tabletop and video games. So we always have active things. We got the Oathsworn campaign, the Kickstarter. So that's sitting out on the dining table. It has been there since Christmas break. So we continue to eat at this very small coffee table that's not big enough for four. Um, what else? We travel a lot. A lot. So, in April, we're going to Japan for 10 days, which
So
is
fun.
we're very excited. We were originally going to Egypt, next month. That fell by the wayside, unfortunately, with current circumstances being what they are. We will get there, but now's not the right time. So my kids were like, "Great," because we wanted to go to Japan more. I was like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, Universal Studios it is for us. What is my favorite place that I visited? France, 100%. I could live there forever. I never should have gotten on the plane back home. It was a massive mistake. Um, we've been to a lot of places. We've been to France, Germany, Austria, Italy, England, Mexico, the Bahamas, Aruba, and a whole lot of states as well, including Hawaii, and probably the entire eastern seaboard, as well as, let's see, some of the places in the Southwest, Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming, a lot. We travel a lot. Oh yes,
I
that's where all the money goes, Sam.
I also love France. I did like in college I did like a summer program and it was like a
Yep,
month like we lived in Paris and like we lived like in the
that's yeah,
university. I fell in love with France
yeah.
and in Paris and I've brought people back, and been able to show them. So, I've never. I mean, I went to Jean Vernier, I went to Versailles, I went to Mont Saint Michel, but I haven't been to the south of France, and I'd love to do
Yeah,
that.
so when my husband and I went to France, it was our fifth anniversary. It was before we had decided to have children. So we spent some time in France, a few days in Paris, and then we took the bullet down to Marseille, and we spent like a day or two there. And then we rented a car, and we were just all over. We went to the Loire Valley. We were in the Dordogne area. We were in Périgord. I mean, we really went. Um, and one of the things that we wanted to see so much of was the Gévaudan area, which is really rife with folklore. There is the famous La Bête de Gévaudan, which is basically like the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, although no smutty romanticism there. A really kind of horrific situation, but they have questions about, well, was it a big cat, like a lion? Was it a werewolf? Was it this? So we really wanted to go and see that place, and it is just as rugged and wild and dangerous and beautiful as we could have imagined, to the point where we almost thought we were going to die by driving off a mountain because the regular road was broken, closed, whatever. It's the only road that would, because we were we did the kind of the French tourist thing, and we stayed at people's houses. So we were staying in this gîte where it was just this woman's home up in the mountains, and the one road to get there had been closed. There was like a bridge that was out, and I'm telling, like, a bridge, like I could have hopped across the river. Like, I'm not an athletic person, but I could have made that jump. That was out. So we had to take this D road, and it was like a switchback, pitch black, no guardrails, no lights whatsoever. It was the most terrifying 2 hours of our lives, but it's a story.
It's a story.
Yeah, it's a story. We were so scared we did not come down from that mountain until it was time for us to leave. When people said, because anytime you read it, I swear, even if you just Google it, if people say when you go to the Gévaudan, people underestimate the landscape and how forbidding it is, and that is absolutely what we did, like dumb American tourists. But it was lovely, and the dinner with our hostess was lovely as well. And yes, Sam, Spain is absolutely on the list. I have a list of places to go that are longer than my lifetime will possibly be.
What are your top 3 places that you want to go next? After
Japan, definitely Egypt. We want to make it there. Probably we'll go to Ireland and Scotland with the kids to do rainbows and castles with them, because they've seen some stuff, but not so much. I don't know. I mean, I really love being in Europe, so I'll probably go back a lot. But the other things that have come up, we really want to travel in North Africa, so probably Morocco. We are thinking Vietnam at some point. I think my husband wants to go on safari. I think I would rather watch National Geographic. Yeah, so we're thinking, Southeast Asia, like where exactly do we want to go? And because I'm a Francophile, I had said Vietnam, because I was like, I know that they will have really cool fusion. So, colonial white woman that I am, I need to see those those sites. It's one of those things where I'm just like, ugh. But if I could see India, I would love to do that. I don't think, I don't think there's a place on this earth that I don't want to see.
Awesome. That's
Maybe
awesome.
Antarctica.
Mm.
Those stories seem really scary. So,
Like
I
the
could do without that.
those videos I see of like the ships, like, no, thank you.
Yep. And anything that requires me to climb the mountain, I'm a no on that.
What are some books or authors that you would recommend to our viewers?
So for people who like my books, the one person that I think does not get enough credit is Trudy Canavan. I absolutely love that woman, and it's probably, oh yeah, it is. It's sitting right behind me. I have like a bunch of her series, but this book and this series, the Magician's Guild. So this is the first one from the Black Magician trilogy. I can't even remember where I picked it up the first time, but I completely zoned out of my entire life. Work did not get done. I sat in my car in a parking lot because I had it in my bag with me. So after I drove to work, I was late to work. I did not show up in my classroom for a solid 10, 15 minutes because I was sitting there finishing reading something. I completely alienated everybody at Thanksgiving dinner. It was just one of those things that like I could not put it down, that there is tension in every single page and everything that she does, and I absolutely love that. So I recommend her for fantasy. And she does have romantic subplots, but she is not a romance author. So if you need to have a happily ever after, this is not for you. But it will rip your heart out more than any other romance book you've ever read.
Awesome. I'll definitely have to check that one out.
Yeah.
So, I just did a live this morning. I tried to write a novel in college and it just didn't work out at that time. But, by seeing indie authors like yourself, I was just inspired to just try again. So I'm going to start writing my novel.
Nice.
And so what advice would you give to an aspiring author or someone, even thinking about writing?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, everybody writes for something. Like the reason that they write or that they come to writing is different. I write because I genuinely like telling the stories. I enjoy spending my time doing that. I write the kind of stories that I want to read. I don't ever expect to be a bestseller. I'll put it that way. As an indie author, I don't ever expect to be a bestseller. I don't ever expect my stories to be for everybody. If I share them with people and they love them, that's a wonderful feeling. But I really did write them for me. Sorry to say. I'm sorry, Sam. I know, but Sam is with me. She's my street team person, and I love her. If as long as you're getting out of it what you want, right? Even if you just say, I finished it, that's fantastic, and it's just for you, and you put it in a drawer the way you would a diary, that's fine. Like, you could just create for yourself, and that's fine. Like, my daughter plays a bunch of instruments. She plays piano, she plays viola, and when she first started, she said, Mom, I don't want to be, in a recital, I don't want to perform. Never mind that she does that now. But when she first started, she was like, I don't want to do that because it's different from like doing something with a class. Like, it's just you. The piano. I said, okay, I don't care. Like, if it's like, if it brings you enrichment, if it brings you joy, then that's all that's required of any kind of art. And so I would say that, like, just there's this pressure to perform for authors, this pressure to constantly produce. Right? Like that if you just say, oh, it's not enough to do a book, you have to do a series. It's not enough to do one series, you have to do two. You have to have a book a year. And I've felt that, and I let myself get in the weeds with selling books because there are things about social media that I like, and there are things about going, to a craft store or building up a book box. Those things are cool, they're fun. But it is still just a hobby. It is not something I do for my career. For other people, that's different. And if you say, oh, I write to market because the end goal is to make money off your book. If that's what you want, fantastic. I don't ever expect that. I am fortunate enough that I make a good living doing what I do. And so this is something that I do for pure enjoyment.
And so kind of like what I got from that, if I get a quote right, is that writing for you, not for somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. Because, if you try to tie yourself in knots trying to create something, especially like an artistic endeavor, if you're trying to create something to make other people happy, well, you're never going to please everybody. So if what you're looking for is affirmation, it's wonderful when you get it, but that should not be the end goal. Because you will end up being unsatisfied. And then you'll question not just your writing ability, but then you start to question yourself as like a person and what your worth is, right? Because this is something that becomes very personal. It could be something that you draw on emotionally from your own experiences or the things that matter to your head. Like, if you're world building, you built a place that you thought is beautiful or characters that you care about. And if someone else says, oh, well, your characters are shit, that you are going to take that personally. So as long as you like it, it does not matter whether or not anybody else likes it. It doesn't mean that it's nice to hear, but at the same time, you can look at the world and say, there's books out there for every stripes, and some none at all, right? They're for people who don't read even beyond the newspaper, or not even that. But if you created something that you like, that is a value in itself. It's just the creative process itself I find to be valuable. I value the arts very, very much.
I love that. I do. Um, and so the next question, you said that you like quiet when you write. So do
Yeah.
do you do you don't play music
Not
or
while I'm writing, but while I'm thinking. So a lot of the times what will happen is I will think about books in my free time, not free time, like especially if I'm commuting. So if I know that I'm that the next thing that I want to do is write a scene and I'm not quite sure where I want to go yet, or I don't have the words yet, I will play music that I think fits that mood. And Sam knows this, and I can share that with whoever wants it. But there is a playlist for this book, and a lot of it is songs that they have nothing to do with one another. It is the most random playlist I think I've ever seen, but it's because I'm hitting different points, like different moods, and so that to me will help. I like music a lot for that purpose.
no, I would definitely love that because music is something really important to me. So that's like I love when there's playlists like in books,
Yeah.
or writing playlists. I love that. And so the last question, which you traveled so many places, so is there anywhere that that inspired the world that you wrote, or have you ever,
So
had that
the
happen?
first the first cover for this book, I think if you do a Google image search, you can probably see it.
Yes.
Um, there was a castle, and that is actually a photograph that I took. Once upon a time, photography was my hobby and not creative writing. And so that was a photo that I took. It was not a castle. It was just a couple of towers covering a bridge in Saumur, which is like mushroom country in France. And the cover is, you see it in a filter, so it's quite different. But in the original image, the stonework, it's like a creamy ivory, and then these kind of purple indigo roofs were just so beautiful. I loved it so much, and it wasn't anything. It was just an overhang for a bridge, like, and not even a big bridge, like not a famous bridge. It was just there, and it was so pretty. And I gave the image that I had to my cover designer at the time, and I said, use this. Like, and he repeated it and made multiple towers, based on, like what I told him the castle was supposed to look like. And so that's Castlemore is the place that I saw. And so it's really easy for me to see that in my head because I remember what it looked like to see the sun shining on the tiles that day.
That's a special memory, and then to kind of have that translated,
Hmm.
is really awesome. So those are all my questions. If anybody else has any further questions, or you can actually even request to join the live, and then you'll like pop up next to us, and you can actually talk with us. So if anybody wants to do that, please do so. Um, and we said that the book comes out next Tuesday.
It
Um,
does.
so that's super exciting. Your book's going to be out in the world, and people are going to get to enjoy it. Um,
Yep.
but which is obviously, we talked about social media. It can, sometimes it could be nerve-wracking and things like that. Is there anything else like I haven't asked, or anything else that's important to you, like as an author, anything that you want to get across to our viewers?
I don't know. I mean, I'm really, as people read and as people, if if you love a book, not just mine, any book that you read, please, leave a review or rating somewhere. Anywhere is better than nowhere. Amazon is the best, even though we all hate it because those are the people that people buy books from. But I if I'm so interested to see how people respond to Alaric now. I mean, like I said, when I wrote him and I wrote his scene, which for people, spoiler alert, trigger warning, it's dubious in terms of consent. Um, that was not a thing. It was certainly nothing I had ever seen in a book before. Like, it didn't come from anywhere. It was just something I thought was necessary to their relationship, like that something was wrong there. Um, and knowing now that we've had this very recent trend of dark romance, I have no idea where, like, this is like some people could get completely hot and bothered for Alaric. I will probably be in that camp. I'm going to be on that side of the line. But but at the same time, Me Too and consent is a thing. And I know that that matters. And that's one of the reasons why I don't read certain kinds of books that have that reputation. So I'm really interested to see, I've already seen some of it, that people have a visceral reaction to him and his scene with Kate. So I'm interested to see where the chips fall on that one.
And so you mentioned trigger warnings. Are there any like important trigger warnings?
Oh my. Again, because I read a lot of Gothic fiction and also lots and lots and lots of horror cinema. My barometer for knowing what trigger warnings are went out the window a really long time ago. When I do my horror writing submissions and people ask for trigger warnings, I laugh. But I'm like, no. But in this context, let's see. So the most important ones would be, I think, for people where that matters, sexual trauma or dubious or non-consent. There's suicidal ideation. There's instances of child abuse, of physical abuse, of sexual abuse, of strangulation. There is gore and violence, and that will increase over time. It's, as light as you think of a world like Ikaria being, it's still a dark fantasy. And it's still for adults. Like I've gotten a couple of interest from younger readers, and they're like, when I had my ARC request line, like I let readers know, like, you need to be 18 or over for this. Like it is an adult book for sure. And even with those trigger warnings in there, if it's something that's just like a subjective personal thing and not like an experiential, like it is actually going to be a trigger for you and set you off, you need to be in a mature state of mind to take it in the right context and not be disturbed by what you read. So that is there.
And oh my God, I had a question. I love ADHD. It's so fun. It's like it's the bane of my existence. Okay, I was thinking we're talking about trigger warnings. Does anybody else have any questions while I try to remember what my question was? We have a couple of new people that have joined. And so we're talking with Kathryn Troy, the author of A Vision in Crimson, which comes out in 1 week from tomorrow. So we're super excited for that to happen. Oh, that was my question. You said you mentioned a street team. Like, do you still have like openings for your street team? Like, what is
because we're so close to the launch, I closed it for a bit. I will probably open it back up again when I'm ready to start gearing up for the launch for the second book. So people who read the first one, loved it, want to be on board, there will be an opportunity for that. And probably the same is true with ARC readers. I think it's technically open still. I don't know what the closing dates are for the NetGalley and Booksprout. That it's on there. And you can get it directly from me also, and I would just send you a link to Dropbox. But those are the first two are through my publisher, so I don't know when they close off access.
Are you allowed to say like what the timeline for the next book is?
Probably, if I could remember it.
This year or not?
It's in my because it changed. It was in my email. Oh, I'm thinking really hard. I want to say September, but I can't remember if that was book 2 or book 3.
Okay.
I think it might, because I know both dates. I think it's June, September, perhaps. I could be totally wrong. But I think that's it. I think it's June, September.
Like back to back like that. Like I mean, let me see. I'm thinking of an author. I mean, a lot of indie authors just publish back to back, so that they just write all of it and then like say this is
And
my
I
course.
wouldn't I
Like,
wouldn't do it unless it was already done. Because
yeah.
I mean, and with the Shadow of Theron, that took me forever to write. And I'm in theory, right? This is how you get out of telling the truth. In theory, I am writing the second book. I started it. uh, I made really good progress, things that I'm very proud of. Um, and then I stopped and started reading, and right now my brain is in that mode where and then I got completely sidetracked by this launch, which has taken up all of my free thinking time. So I need a little bit more space, mental space to read and absorb because I didn't mention this. When I'm writing, I don't really read books in the genre just in case,
Hmm.
which means I have not read a fantasy book in 10 years.
Oh wow.
Uh-huh. And that's my favorite genre.
Yeah.
I love fantasy, so I'm taking a step back for a little bit and I'm gonna catch up very, very quickly because I read like a super speed demon. I read like the Flash. So I'm gonna
People
read something that is not a murder mystery or a crime novel, although those will be in there too, because that's what I've been spending my time on. Because I was like, I know I'm not writing those. And then I will get back to Argos Ascendant because that book is really important to me and I have it all. The outline is all there. I just have to actually put the words down.
and I totally relate to reading like a speed demon. Like I've read 60 books this month so far and half of it's over. Like I read fast. I can't like because of ADHD, like my brain works that fast and
Yeah,
people are, are you actually reading the book? I'm like, yes, I am actually reading the
yeah,
book. It's
yeah.
just that
I
my
am
brain.
actually reading this book.
Yeah.
It's
um,
like those movies where you like the alien, they put their hand in the middle of the book and they sit there like
yes.
this and like, that was a great story. That's it.
um, and let me see. Oh, like how does I don't know if you know about this, but like are there going to be special editions of this book or like art like how do you even go about like getting that? Because
I hope there will be more news on that front to come. That will all depend, no pressure anybody, that'll all depend on my readers and how much love they show this book and how excited they get by it. That being said, I do have plans to offer a sprayed edge version of this. So if people want to go on my website, you can pre-order a premium book bundle and it would come with a signed paperback that has sprayed edges. You'd get a foiled bookmark and then a bunch of other premium goodies like character art, which is fun. Not this character art, but other character art.
no, I'll totally be doing that. Because I love I don't know sprayed edges. I don't know what it is about sprayed edges. Like everybody just loves them, and I just like
It's
them.
I yeah. I so you can I this is like one bookcase out of like 50. We just put up a new bookcase the other day that goes to the ceiling. I didn't even leave the house. I didn't buy a single thing. The minute that bookcase was assembled, we filled it. That is how many overage books we had that did not have a place since the last time we bought a bookcase. That's how many books we own. So we
Wow.
do buy books, but a lot of the times they will be books that we share the interests of or books that we know like our special editions and things that we will keep. So I'm very interested in buying special edition books, but I use my library like nobody's business. If you watch like my Instagram hauls, they are absolutely insane. I will return one book and borrow 10 on top of the other 10 that I had.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has, people like sign, like few people said like signed books. They like signed books better. But you can
Yeah,
get both if you order from Catherine's
right. And
website.
so there are options. They all come signed, whether you get them sprayed or not. But there will be signed paperbacks. I haven't 100% decided on this, but as long as people are interested, I'm gonna try to figure out how to do a virtual signing so that anybody who is buying a signed book from me that we can do kind of like what we're doing here, and I'll talk and sign and go along that way before I send them out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kathryn, for joining me and
Thank
being,
you.
my guinea pig, my first NG author interview. But, I really, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have asked you if I didn't love your book. I would have
Oh,
just
well,
been like,
thank you. I appreciate that very much.
so I loved your book. And, thank you everybody for watching. And don't forget to post those reviews because they are really, really important, whether we like to admit it or not. And, just get ready for discovering Luca and Caitlin's story.
Hmm.
All
Thank you
right.
so much, Tay. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so much for having me, and thank you guys for coming. Thanks, Nikki and Sam. I love you guys. Thank you for everybody who showed up today.
All right. Bye. Have a great night.
Bye, you too.